In the shadowed halls of Blackthorn Manor, a cursed sapphire dagger vanishes, sparking fear of an ancient curse. Hercule Poirot, with his razor-sharp mind, unravels a web of greed, deceit, and hidden treasures. From a cloaked figure in the night to a blood-stained blade, every clue points to betrayal. Can Poirot expose the truth before the curse claims another victim? Secrets unravel, motives clash, and the little grey cells triumph in this chilling tale of mystery. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Blackthorn Manor. The November fog draped London in a shroud of mystery, curling around the gas lamps and softening the clatter of hansoms on Baker Street. In his immaculate flat at Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot stood before a gilded mirror, adjusting his patent leather tie-pin with the precision of a jeweller. His moustache, a masterpiece of symmetry, gleamed under the electric light. It was 1932, and the great detective, though retired in name, found his little grey cells ever restless for a puzzle worthy of their talents. On the polished mahogany table lay a letter, its cream vellum envelope bearing a wax seal embossed with a thorny crest. The sender was Lady Eleanor Marwood of Blackthorn Manor, a name that stirred faint recognition in Poirot's encyclopedic memory. A Devonshire family of old lineage, their wealth rooted in tin mines and maritime trade. The letter, penned in an elegant hand, requested his presence at her secluded estate for a weekend gathering. The matter, she wrote, was one of grave import concerning a family heirloom, a sapphire-encrusted dagger of ancient origin, whispered to carry a curse that had resurfaced with troubling omens. Poirot, ever disdainful of superstition, found his curiosity piqued not by tales of curses, but by the tremor of urgency beneath Lady Eleanor's polished words. He rang for his valet, who promptly summoned Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's steadfast companion, whose honest, if unsubtle mind served as a foil to the detective's brilliance. Hastings arrived within the hour, his tweed overcoat damp from the fog, his face alight with the prospect of adventure. "A cursed dagger, Poirot," he said, settling into a leather armchair with a glass of whiskey and soda. "Sounds like something out of a Gothic novel. You don't put stock in such rot, do you?" "Mon ami," Poirot replied, his green eyes glinting like polished jade. "The supernatural is but a mask for human folly. A curse does not intrigue me, but the secrets it cloaks, those are the threads I shall unravel. Lady Eleanor fears something, and it is not ghosts." The next morning, they boarded the 8:15 train to Devon, the carriage rattling through a landscape of mist-veiled moors and skeletal trees. Poirot, clad in a perfectly tailored overcoat, studied the passing scenery with a distracted air, his mind already weaving patterns from the letter's sparse clues. Hastings, ever the optimist, chatted about the Marwood family, recalling vague society gossip about their reclusive matriarch and her profligate son. Blackthorn Manor emerged from the fog as the train neared its destination, a Gothic pile of weathered stone perched atop a craggy hill, its turrets stabbing at the low clouds. A chauffeur in a sombre livery drove them up a winding drive lined with gnarled oaks, their branches clawing at the sky. The manor's heavy oak doors swung open to reveal Lady Eleanor Marwood, a woman of 50, with silver-streaked auburn hair and a bearing that spoke of both grace and resolve. Her grey eyes, though warm in greeting, betrayed a flicker of unease as she welcomed Poirot and Hastings into the cavernous hall. "You are most kind to come, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low and cultured. "I fear we are in need of your singular talents." The hall was a study in faded grandeur. A crystal chandelier gleamed dully above a marble floor, and portraits of stern-faced Marwoods gazed from the walls. Lady Eleanor led them to a drawing-room where a fire crackled, casting shadows on tapestries depicting medieval hunts. She introduced the other guests, each of whom Poirot observed with his customary acuity. Reginald Marwood, her son, was a handsome man in his late 20s, his charm marred by a restless energy and a tendency to avoid his mother's gaze. His fiancée, Clara Vaughan, an actress with striking chestnut curls and eyes that missed nothing, carried herself with the poise of one accustomed to the spotlight. Dr. Felix Langston, a wiry historian with a scholar's stoop and a feverish intensity, clutched a notebook filled with scribbled notes on antiquities. Mrs. Beatrice Harrow, a widowed cousin, was a small, nervous woman whose black dress and ever-present rosary suggested a morbid fascination with the occult. Finally, Victor Crane, a burly antiques dealer with a brusque manner and calculating eyes, seemed out of place among the refined company, his hands fidgeting as if eager to appraise something or someone. Over tea served in delicate Sèvres cups, Lady Eleanor recounted the dagger's history. Forged in Venice during the Renaissance, it was adorned with a sapphire said to have been plucked from a Mughal emperor's crown. Legend held that the dagger brought ruin to those who claimed it without right, its curse claiming 3 owners in as many centuries: a merchant stabbed in a duel, a countess who fell from a balcony, and a Marwood ancestor who drowned under mysterious circumstances. Now housed in a locked glass case in the manor's library, the dagger had become the focus of unsettling events. Lights flickered without cause, footsteps echoed in empty corridors, and a pervasive chill haunted the house. Poirot listened, his fingers steepled, his expression one of polite interest. "Madame," he said at length, "you speak of a curse, yet you retain this dagger. Why not rid yourself of such a troublesome relic?" Lady Eleanor's lips tightened. "It is a Marwood heirloom, Monsieur Poirot. To sell it would be to sever our heritage. Yet I confess, these disturbances, they unsettle me." Dinner followed, a formal affair in a dining room lit by candelabra. The conversation was strained, punctuated by Mrs. Harrow's murmurs about dark portents and Clara's sharp retorts. Reginald drank more wine than was prudent, while Dr. Langston waxed lyrical about the dagger's craftsmanship, his eyes gleaming with something akin to obsession. Victor Crane, seated opposite Poirot, spoke little, but watched the others with a predator's patience. As the guests retired, Poirot lingered in the hall, his gaze lingering on the library door, its heavy iron lock gleaming faintly. "Hastings," he whispered, "this house, it is a stage, and each guest plays a part. But who is the director of this drama?" Hastings yawned. "You're seeing plots where there's only nerves, old chap. Probably just a drafty old manor." Poirot smiled faintly. "Non, mon ami. The draught, it is not the wind, but the breath of deception. Tomorrow, we shall see what secrets Blackthorn Manor hides." Chapter 2. The Shadow in the Night. The wind howled around Blackthorn Manor, rattling the leaded windows and sending a chill through the ancient stone walls. Hercule Poirot, ensconced in his guest room, sat in a high-backed chair by the fire, his small, neat hands folded over a leather-bound notebook. The room, though elegantly appointed with damask curtains and a 4-poster bed, carried the same air of unease that permeated the house. The events of the evening, Lady Eleanor's tale of the cursed sapphire dagger, the strained interactions among the guests, and the undercurrent of secrets, had set Poirot's little grey cells into a frenzy of activity. He did not believe in curses, but he believed in the human heart, with all its capacity for deceit, greed, and fear. Captain Hastings, already in his pyjamas, stood by the window, peering into the fog-shrouded night. "Dashed eerie place, Poirot," he muttered, rubbing his hands together. "All this talk of curses and ghosts. I say, it's enough to make a fellow jump at shadows." Poirot's eyes twinkled, though his expression remained grave. "Shadows, mon ami, are cast by something tangible. It is not the ghost we must seek, but the hand that moves in the dark. Tell me, Hastings, what did you observe at dinner? Hastings frowned, scratching his chin. Well, Reginald seemed a bit off. Drinking too much, I thought. Clara was watching him like a hawk, and that Mrs. Harrow kept muttering about omens. Dr. Langston was positively obsessed with that dagger, and Crane, well, he's a rum sort, kept eyeing the door to the library as if he expected it to open by itself. Précisément, Poirot said, tapping his notebook. Each guest reveals a thread of motive, a glimpse of character. The question is, which thread leads to the heart of this mystery? Before Hastings could reply, a piercing scream shattered the silence, echoing through the manor's corridors like a banshee's wail. Poirot was on his feet in an instant, his agility belying his fastidious demeanour. He seized his dressing gown, a silk affair embroidered with his initials, and motioned for Hastings to follow. Vite, mon ami. The drama. It unfolds. They hurried down the oak-panelled corridor, their footsteps muffled by the thick Persian runner. The scream had come from the direction of the library, and as they descended the grand staircase, they found the other guests converging on the same spot. Lady Eleanor, her face ashen, stood in her nightgown, clutching a candelabrum. Reginald, dishevelled and still in his dinner jacket, gripped a poker as if ready to strike. Clara Vaughan, her chestnut curls loose, looked more composed than the rest, though her eyes darted about the room. Dr. Felix Langston, spectacles askew, clutched a leather-bound tome, while Mrs. Beatrice Harrow, trembling in a black shawl, whispered prayers. Victor Crane, the antiques dealer, stood apart, his heavy frame tense, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. The library door stood ajar, revealing a scene of chaos. The glass case that housed the sapphire dagger was shattered, its jagged edges glinting in the flickering light of a single lamp. The dagger itself was gone, leaving only a velvet cushion in its place. Lady Eleanor pointed a trembling finger toward a shadowy corner near the bookshelves. There, she gasped. A figure, a cloaked figure. It was there, holding the dagger, and then it vanished. The curse! Mrs. Harrow wailed, her rosary beads clicking frantically. It's taken the dagger! We're doomed! Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. Silence, s'il vous plaît. Panic obscures the truth. Let us examine the facts with clarity. He stepped into the library, his polished shoes crunching on slivers of glass. The room was vast, its walls lined with ancient tomes and portraits of stern Marwood ancestors. A heavy oak table stood in the centre, littered with papers and a decanter of brandy. The air smelled of old leather and wax, tinged with something sharper. Fear, perhaps. Poirot knelt by the broken case, his eyes scanning every detail. The glass had been shattered outward, suggesting a blow from within the room, yet the lock on the case remained intact, its key still in Lady Eleanor's possession. He traced a finger along the edge, noting the precision of the break. Curieux, he murmured. A thief who breaks glass but does not touch the lock. Why? He moved to the corner Lady Eleanor had indicated, where a heavy velvet curtain swayed slightly, as if disturbed by a draught. Behind it was a tall window, its latch firmly closed, though a faint scratch marked the frame. Poirot's gaze fell to the floor, where a trail of dust, disturbed by footsteps, led from the case to the window and then, curiously, back to the centre of the room, where it abruptly stopped. Most interesting, he said, his voice low. A thief who walks but does not leave, or a theft that is not what it seems. Hastings, peering over his shoulder, frowned. Looks like someone got in through the window, Poirot. Those footprints. Non, Hastings, Poirot interrupted, his tone sharp. The window is locked from within, and the scratch is too deliberate, too shallow for a forced entry. This is a performance, staged for our benefit. He turned to the guests, who huddled near the door. their faces a tableau of fear and suspicion. "Madame Marwood," he said, addressing Lady Eleanor, "who else has access to this room?" "Only the staff, and they are loyal," she replied, her voice trembling. "The key to the case is kept in my private safe. No one could have taken it." Poirot nodded, his eyes moving to Reginald. "Monsieur Marwood, you were quick to arrive with a poker in hand. Were you expecting trouble?" Reginald flushed, his boyish charm faltering. I heard the scream and grabbed the first thing I could find. I thought someone might be in danger." "And you, Mademoiselle Vaughan?" Poirot turned to Clara, whose composure was a stark contrast to the other's agitation. "You seem remarkably calm." Clara's lips curved in a faint smile. "I'm an actress, Monsieur Poirot. I'm used to drama. But I saw nothing. Only heard Lady Eleanor's scream and came running." Dr. Langston, clutching his book as if it were a shield, spoke up. "This is the curse at work. The dagger's history is clear. Those who covet it meet ruin. I warned Lady Eleanor to secure it better." Poirot's gaze lingered on the historian, noting the feverish glint in his eyes. "And you, Monsieur Crane?" he asked, turning to the antiques dealer, whose hands remained buried in his pockets. "Where were you when this curse struck?" "In my room," Crane said gruffly, his voice like gravel. "Heard the commotion and came down. That's all." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet your boots, monsieur, are flecked with mud, as if you have been outside this very night." Crane's jaw tightened, but he offered no explanation. Mrs. Harrow, meanwhile, sank into a chair, her prayers growing louder. "The dagger is gone, taken by the spirits. We must appease them." "Enough of this nonsense," Clara snapped, her voice cutting through the room. "There's no curse, just a thief. Monsieur Poirot, surely you can find them." Poirot smiled faintly, his mind racing. "Rest assured, mademoiselle, the truth will reveal itself. But for now, I ask that no one leaves the manor. The thief, I suspect, is still among us." He dismissed the guests, instructing them to return to their rooms, though sleep would elude them all. Alone with Hastings, he examined the library once more, his movements methodical. He paused by the oak table, where a single sapphire chip, no larger than a pea, glinted under the edge of a rug. He pocketed it, his expression inscrutable. "What's that, Poirot?" Hastings asked, leaning closer. "A clue, mon ami," Poirot replied. "Or perhaps a deception. This chip was not here by accident. Someone wished it to be found, or overlooked." They returned to Poirot's room, where he lit a cigarette and paced, his small frame a bundle of restless energy. "Consider, Hastings," he said, exhaling a plume of smoke. "The case is broken, the dagger is gone, yet the lock is untouched. The footprints lead to a locked window, and a sapphire chip lies conveniently in our path. This is no ordinary theft." Hastings rubbed his temples. "You think it's an inside job? But who? Reginald's got debts, Clara's ambitious, Langston's obsessed with the dagger, Crane's shifty, and Mrs. Harrow's half mad with her talk of curses." "Précisément," Poirot said, stopping to face him. "Each has a motive, but the method, it is too theatrical, too deliberate. The cloaked figure Lady Eleanor saw, the shattered glass, the bloodless theft, these are the flourishes of a mind that wishes to distract." "Distract from what?" Hastings asked, bewildered. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "That, mon ami, is what we shall discover. Tomorrow we question each guest in turn. The little grey cells, they are already at work." As the clock struck 2, the manor settled into an uneasy silence, broken only by the wind's mournful wail. Poirot extinguished his cigarette and gazed into the fire, his mind a labyrinth of possibilities. The sapphire dagger, with its whispered curse, was but a prop in a human drama, one he was determined to unravel before the curtain fell. Chapter 3. The Historian's Tale. The morning after the theft dawned grey and oppressive, the fog pressing against Blackthorn Manor's windows, like a conspirator seeking entry. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, stood in the dining room, sipping a tisane prepared to his exact specifications by the manor's flustered cook. The breakfast table, laden with silver dishes of kedgeree, toast and marmalade, was a silent battlefield, the guests' faces etched with suspicion and fatigue. Captain Hastings, seated beside Poirot, buttered his toast with unnecessary vigour, his eyes darting between the assembled company. The events of the previous night, the shattered case, the vanished sapphire dagger, and Lady Eleanor's glimpse of a cloaked figure, had cast a pall over the household. Poirot, however, was undeterred, his mind a whirl of connections and possibilities. He had spent the early hours reviewing his notes, the sapphire chip from the library, tucked safely in a velvet pouch. Its presence, he suspected, was no accident, but a deliberate breadcrumb in a trail of deceit. Lady Eleanor, her composure strained but intact, presided over the table with the dignity of a captain steering a sinking ship. Reginald Marwood, her son, pushed his food about his plate, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep or excess claret. Clara Vaughan, his fiancée, maintained an air of poised detachment, though her sharp gaze missed nothing. Dr. Felix Langston, the historian, scribbled furiously in his notebook between bites, his thin face alight with a nervous energy that Poirot found telling. Mrs. Beatrice Harrow, clutching her rosary, muttered about divine retribution, her breakfast untouched. Victor Crane, the antiques dealer, sat at the table's far end, his heavy frame slouched, his expression unreadable, save for a flicker of impatience. Poirot set down his cup with a delicate clink, drawing all eyes. "Mes amis," he began, his voice soft yet commanding, "the events of last night are most disturbing, but they are not the work of spirits. The sapphire dagger has been taken, yes, but by a human hand. To find it, we must understand its significance. Dr. Langston, perhaps you will enlighten us further on this relic's history." Langston blinked, his spectacles catching the light. I've told you all I know," he stammered, but Poirot's steady gaze held him fast. "Non, monsieur," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. "You are a scholar of antiquities, a man who lives for the past. The dagger, it is more than a curiosity to you, n'est-ce pas? Tell us of its origins, its journey through time. Leave nothing out." Langston hesitated, then launched into his tale, his voice gaining fervour. The sapphire dagger, he explained, was crafted in 1563 for a Venetian noble, Lorenzo de' Medici, not of the Florentine line, but a distant cousin. Its blade was forged from Damascus steel, its hilt encrusted with a single flawless sapphire, reputedly stolen from a Mughal emperor's treasury during a crusade. The gem, said to be imbued with mystical properties, was believed to glow faintly when danger threatened its rightful owner. The dagger passed through noble hands, each transfer marked by tragedy. A merchant stabbed in a Venetian alley, a French countess who fell, or was pushed, from a chateau balcony, and a Marwood ancestor, Sir Thomas, who drowned in a Devon river in 1789, the dagger clutched in his hand. The curse, Langston concluded, his eyes gleaming, is no mere legend. The sapphire is said to judge its owner's worth. Those who claim it unjustly meet ruin. Mrs. Harrow gasped, crossing herself. "It's true. The dagger's wrath has awakened." Clara rolled her eyes. "Superstition, nothing more. It's a valuable artifact, and someone saw a chance to profit." Reginald shifted uncomfortably, his fork clattering against his plate. "Mother, why keep such a thing? Sell it and be done with it." Lady Eleanor's lips tightened. "It is our heritage, Reginald. To discard it would dishonour our name." Poirot listened, his fingers steepled, his mind sifting Langston's words for hidden truths. "Most interesting, Doctor. Langston, you speak of the sapphire's glow. Did you observe such a phenomenon in the library?" Langston faltered, his hands twisting the napkin. No, I didn't see it last night. I was in my room until the scream. Vraiment? Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet, you were quick to join us, book in hand, as if prepared for a lecture. Curious, no? Langston flushed, but said nothing. Poirot turned his attention to the room, noting Clara's faint smirk, Crane's clenched jaw, and Mrs. Harrow's fervent prayers. He rose, brushing a crumb from his lapel. Merci, Dr. Langston. Your knowledge is most illuminating. Now, I shall inspect the library once more. Hastings, you will accompany me. The library, bathed in the weak light of a foggy morning, was as Poirot had left it. The shattered case, the velvet cushion, the dust-streaked floor. He moved with purpose, his eyes scanning every detail. The footprints, he noted, were uneven, as if made by someone deliberately scuffing their shoes to obscure their size or gait. He knelt by the window, examining the scratch on the frame. It was shallow, too precise for a burglar's tool, more like a mark made to suggest an attempt at entry. Hastings, he said, pointing to the curtain. Observe how it hangs. It is slightly askew, as if someone brushed against it. Yet the window is locked, and the dust beneath it undisturbed save for those footprints, which end abruptly. This is no ordinary theft. Hastings frowned, scratching his head. You're saying it's staged? But why steal the dagger and leave it looking like a ghost did it? Poirot smiled faintly. To distract, mon ami. To make us look for phantoms instead of motives. The sapphire chip I found last night. It was placed, I believe, to reinforce the legend of the curse. Someone wishes us to fear the supernatural, not the human heart. He moved to the oak table, where a decanter of brandy stood beside a stack of papers. Estate records, he noted, some bearing Reginald's scrawled signature. A faint smudge of ink on the table's edge caught his eye, and he leaned closer, detecting a trace of wax, as if a candle had dripped there recently. Curieux, he murmured. The library was lit by a lamp last night, not candles. Yet here is wax, fresh and unmarred. Hastings, ever practical, suggested. Perhaps the thief used a candle to see in the dark? Perhaps, Poirot said, but his tone suggested doubt. He pocketed a flake of the wax, his mind turning to the guests' alibis. Each had been in their room, or so they claimed. Yet Crane's muddy boots and Langston's nervous energy hinted at secrets unspoken. Returning to the drawing room, Poirot requested a private word with Clara Vaughan. She joined him by the fire, her posture relaxed, but her eyes wary. Mademoiselle, he began, you are a woman of perception. What have you observed of your fiancé, Reginald? He seems troubled. Clara's lips twitched, as if weighing her words. Reginald's always been restless, Monsieur Poirot. He's charming, but he's in debt. Gambling, mostly. He's been distant since we arrived, sneaking off to whisper with that Crane fellow. I think he wants to sell the dagger to settle his accounts, but Lady Eleanor won't hear of it. And you? Poirot asked, his gaze piercing. What do you desire from this dagger? She laughed, a sharp, clear sound. I'm an actress, not a thief. I want a secure future, not some cursed relic. But I'll admit, I don't trust Crane. He's been sniffing around the library since we got here. Poirot nodded, filing away her words. Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most candid. As Clara left, Hastings leaned in. She's a cool one, Poirot. Do you think she's involved? Everyone is involved, Hastings, until proven otherwise, Poirot replied. But Mademoiselle Vaughan sees more than she says. Her eyes, they are like those of a cat, watching the mice scurry. The afternoon brought a new development. A maid, tidying the garden path, found a scrap of black cloth caught in a rosebush near the library window. Poirot examined it, noting its fine weave and a faint scent of lavender, a perfume he recalled from Mrs. Harrow's shawl. He tucked it into his pocket, his mind racing. Was the cloth a clue to the cloaked figure, or another misdirection? He summoned Mrs. Harrow, who entered the drawing room wringing her hands. Madame, he said gently, You speak of spirits, but I am interested in the living. This cloth, does it belong to you? She paled, her rosary clicking. I lost a shawl in the garden yesterday, but I swear I wasn't in the library. I saw the figure in a dream, Monsieur Poirot, cloaked in black, holding the dagger. It's the curse. Poirot's smile was patient. Dreams, madame, are but reflections of our fears. Tell me, have you spoken of this dream to anyone else? Only Dr. Langston, she admitted. He said it was a sign the dagger must be cleansed. Poirot dismissed her, his thoughts turning to Langston's influence. The historian's obsession with the dagger's lore was undeniable, but was he merely a scholar or something more? Poirot resolved to watch him closely. As evening approached, the manor's tension grew palpable. Lady Eleanor announced her intention to summon the local constable, prompting uneasy glances among the guests. Poirot, however, requested one final inspection of the library before nightfall. There, he found a new clue, a faint smudge of boot polish on the base of a bookshelf near where the footprints had ended. It was fresh, and it matched the shade of Crane's boots. Hastings, Poirot said, his voice low. The plot thickens. Someone has gone to great lengths to weave this tale of a curse, but the little grey cells, they see through the fog. Tomorrow, we shall tighten the net. As they retired, the manor seemed to hold its breath, the shadows lengthening as if to conceal the truth. Poirot, undaunted, lay awake, his mind a chessboard where each guest was a piece, their moves calculated and their secrets waiting to be exposed. Chapter 4. A glimpse of motive. The fog that clung to Blackthorn Manor seemed to thicken with each passing hour, as if the very air conspired to obscure the truth. Hercule Poirot, seated in the drawing-room with a cup of café au lait, observed the guests with the precision of a watchmaker. The morning had brought no relief from the tension that gripped the household. If anything, the absence of the sapphire dagger had sharpened suspicions, turning every glance into an accusation. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, sat beside him, his brow furrowed as he tried to keep pace with Poirot's intricate deductions. The breakfast table had been a study in unease. Lady Eleanor, her face pale but resolute, had spoken little, her eyes lingering on her son, Reginald, whose nervous fidgeting betrayed a sleepless night. Clara Vaughan, poised as ever, sipped her tea with an air of detachment, though her sharp gaze darted between Reginald and the others. Dr. Felix Langston, his notebook now tucked away, seemed distracted, his fingers tapping an erratic rhythm on the table. Mrs. Beatrice Harrow, her rosary ever present, murmured prayers under her breath, her fear of the curse undiminished. Victor Crane, the antiques dealer, ate with mechanical precision, his heavy-lidded eyes revealing nothing but a faint glint of calculation. Poirot, his own breakfast untouched save for the coffee, had spent the morning reviewing his findings: the sapphire chip, the wax droplet, the scrap of lavender-scented cloth, and the smudge of boot polish. Each clue was a piece of a puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. The theft, he was certain, was no mere act of greed, but a carefully orchestrated performance designed to mislead. The question was not only who had taken the dagger, but why they wished to cloak their actions in the guise of a curse. As the guests dispersed, Poirot requested private interviews, beginning with Victor Crane. The dealer joined him in the library, where the shattered case stood as a silent witness to the previous night's drama. Crane's burly frame seemed to fill the room, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression one of guarded defiance. "Monsieur Crane," Poirot began, his voice smooth as silk, "you are a man of business, accustomed to valuing objects of great worth. Tell me, what is the sapphire dagger's true value?" Crane's eyes narrowed, but he answered readily. "It's a rare piece, 16th century craftsmanship, with a gem of exceptional clarity. On the open market, it could fetch $50,000, perhaps more to the right collector." "And you have discussed this with Monsieur Reginald?" Poirot asked, his gaze piercing. Crane shifted, his boots scuffing the rug. The boy's in debt. Everyone knows it. I offered to broker a sale discreetly to settle his troubles. Lady Eleanor wouldn't approve, but Reginald was keen. Yet you were in the garden last night, Poirot said, producing the scrap of cloth from his pocket. Your boots, they carry mud. And this cloth, it was found near the library window. You claim to be in your room. Crane's jaw tightened, a flush creeping up his neck. I took a walk after dinner. The air in this place is stifling. I didn't go near the library, and that cloth isn't mine. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Merci, monsieur. For now, that will be all. As Crane left, Poirot turned to Hastings, who had been listening intently. He's hiding something, Poirot, Hastings said. Those boots, muddy as sin. And he's got the means to sell the dagger. Oui, Hastings. But means are not motive, Poirot replied. Crane is a man of opportunity, but is he the architect of this theft? We shall see. Next, Poirot summoned Mrs. Beatrice Harrow, who entered the library clutching her rosary, her eyes wide with apprehension. The room's shadows seemed to deepen in her presence, as if her fear summoned them. Madame, Poirot said gently, you speak often of this curse. Tell me, what do you know of the dagger's power? Mrs. Harrow's voice trembled. It's evil, Monsieur Poirot. I felt it since we arrived. Last night in my dreams, I saw the cloaked figure again, its face hidden, the dagger gleaming in its hand. It stood over a body, blood everywhere. I woke screaming before I saw more. Poirot leaned forward, his eyes kind but probing. This figure, madam, did it resemble anyone in this house? She shook her head, her rosary clicking. It was a spirit, not a person. The dagger's curse summons it. I told Dr. Langston we should hold a séance to appease it, but he laughed. Dr. Langston, he does not believe in the curse? Poirot asked. He says it's history, not magic, she replied. But he's wrong. The sapphire judges the unworthy. Poirot showed her the scrap of cloth. This was found in the garden, scented with lavender, as is your shawl. Can you explain it? Mrs. Harrow gasped, her hand flying to her throat. My shawl was torn yesterday while I walked the grounds. I didn't notice it missing until now. Someone must have taken it. Poirot dismissed her with a reassuring smile, but his mind was racing. The cloth, the wax, the footprints, all pointed to a deliberate attempt to fuel the legend of the curse. But whose hand had woven this web? He next spoke with Lady Eleanor, who joined him in the drawing-room, her posture rigid with resolve. Monsieur Poirot, she said, I intend to call the constable today. This theft cannot go unanswered. A prudent decision, madame, Poirot replied. But permit me a little time. The truth is close, and I would not have it trampled by official boots. Tell me, have you noticed any change in your son's behaviour? Lady Eleanor's lips tightened. Reginald has always been impulsive, but these debts, they've made him desperate. He's spoken of selling the dagger, though he knows my feelings. I fear he's been influenced by that Crane fellow. And Mademoiselle Vaughan? Poirot asked. She is devoted to him. She is ambitious, Lady Eleanor said carefully. Clara loves Reginald, I believe, but she loves security more. She's urged him to settle his debts, even if it means defying me. Poirot nodded, his mind turning to Clara's sharp intelligence. He requested her presence next, and she entered with the grace of a stage star, her eyes meeting his without flinching. Mademoiselle, he said, you are observant, a quality I admire. What have you seen in this house that others have missed? Clara's smile was wry. Plenty, Monsieur Poirot. Reginald's drowning in debt. He's been borrowing from unsavoury types in London. Crane's been feeding his desperation, promising a quick sale of the dagger. And Langston, he's not just a scholar. I overheard him arguing with Crane about the dagger's authenticity. Langston swears it's genuine, but Crane called it a clever fake. Poirot's eyebrows rose. A fake? Most interesting. And you, mademoiselle, what do you believe? I believe someone wanted that dagger badly enough to stage a theft, she said. Curse or no curse, it's about money or power. Isn't it always? Perhaps, Poirot said, his tone enigmatic. Merci, mademoiselle. You have given me much to consider. As Clara left, Hastings leaned in. She's sharp, Poirot. Do you think she's in on it? She sees the game, Hastings, but whether she plays it remains to be seen, Poirot replied. Her words about the dagger's authenticity, they open a new path. If the dagger is a fake, why steal it? And if it is genuine, what else does it conceal? The afternoon brought a fresh discovery. A footman, cleaning the library, found a single glove tucked behind a bookshelf, its cuff embroidered with a crimson R. Poirot examined it, noting its fine leather and the faint scent of tobacco. He showed it to Reginald, who paled but denied ownership. I've never seen it before, he insisted, though his voice wavered. Poirot did not press him, but his suspicions deepened. The glove, like the cloth and the wax, was too convenient, too perfectly placed. He returned to the library, where he found another clue, a faint mark on the floor near the broken case, as if a heavy object had been dragged briefly. It was subtle, easily overlooked, but to Poirot's trained eye, it spoke volumes. As evening fell, the manor's atmosphere grew heavier, the guests avoiding each other's gaze. Poirot, undaunted, gathered his notes and confided in Hastings. The pieces, they begin to align, mon ami. The glove, the cloth, the wax, the polish, they are not accidents, but arrows pointing to a truth. Someone in this house plays a dangerous game, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall uncover it. He retired to his room, his mind a whirl of connections. The sapphire dagger, with its whispered curse, was a magnet for human desires. Greed, fear, ambition. But it was the human hand, not a spectral one, that had set this drama in motion, and Poirot was determined to unmask it before another act unfolded. Chapter 5. The Sapphire's Glow. The gloom of Blackthorn Manor deepened as twilight settled over the Devon hills, the fog weaving a shroud that seemed to mirror the tangled secrets within. Hercule Poirot, his small frame a beacon of order amidst the chaos, sat in the drawing-room, his notebook open, his pen poised like a conductor's baton. The theft of the sapphire dagger had ignited a fire of suspicion among the guests, and each new clue, the sapphire chip, the wax droplet, the lavender-scented cloth, the embroidered glove, and the faint drag mark, had tightened the net around the truth. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful chronicler, paced by the fireplace, his honest face creased with frustration. "Dash it all, Poirot," he said, running a hand through his hair. "We've got clues galore, but they're leading us in circles. That glove with the R, it's got to point to Reginald, hasn't it? And yet he denies it, and Clara's hinting at Crane and Langston. It's a muddle." Poirot's green eyes twinkled, though his expression remained grave. "Patience, mon ami. The clues, they are not a muddle but a mosaic. Each piece it fits, if only we see the pattern. Tonight we shall apply a little pressure to reveal it." The day had been one of mounting tension. Lady Eleanor, her resolve fraying, had reiterated her intention to summon the constable, though Poirot had persuaded her to delay until morning. Reginald Marwood, his charm eroded by nerves, avoided his mother's gaze, while Clara Vaughan maintained her cool detachment, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Dr. Felix Langston, the historian, had retreated into his notes, his obsession with the dagger's lore growing more pronounced. Mrs. Beatrice Harrow, her prayers now a constant murmur, seemed to shrink further into her fears of the supernatural. Victor Crane, the antiques dealer, prowled the manor's corridors, his brusque demeanour barely concealing a restless unease. Poirot, sensing the moment was ripe, devised a plan to unsettle the guilty. He gathered the guests in the library, where the shattered case stood as a stark reminder of the crime. The room was lit by a single chandelier, its candles casting flickering shadows across the bookshelves and portraits. Poirot stood by the oak table, the sapphire chip from the library floor placed prominently before him on a velvet cloth. The guests, seated in a semicircle, watched with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice steady and commanding, "the theft of the sapphire dagger is no act of spirits, but of a cunning mind. To find this mind, we must consult the dagger's legend. Dr. Langston, you have told us the sapphire glows when danger nears its owner. Tonight, we test this tale." He produced a small vial of phosphorescent powder, a theatrical prop he had acquired in London for just such occasions. With a deft movement, he sprinkled a trace onto the sapphire chip, then dimmed the chandelier, plunging the room into near darkness. The chip began to emit a faint, eerie glow, casting a spectral light across the faces of the guests. Mrs. Harrow gasped, her rosary slipping from her fingers. "The curse! It lives!" Clara's eyes narrowed, her lips twitching with amusement, while Reginald shifted uncomfortably, his hands clenched. Dr. Langston leaned forward, his spectacles reflecting the glow, his expression a mix of fascination and unease. Victor Crane's jaw tightened, his gaze fixed on the chip as if it were a threat. "Observe," Poirot said, his voice cutting through the tension. "The sapphire reveals the truth. It glows not for spirits, but for the guilty heart among us. Who here knows more than they have said?" The room was silent, save for the crackle of the fire. Poirot's eyes moved from face to face, noting each reaction. Clara's glance darted to Reginald, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. Reginald's shoulders hunched, as if bearing an unseen weight. Langston's fingers twitched, as if longing to seize the chip. Crane's hands remained in his pockets, but his posture was rigid, betraying tension. Mrs. Harrow's prayers resumed, a frantic whisper. Poirot restored the lights, the glow fading as the chip returned to its mundane state. "A trick, perhaps," he said, "but one that reveals much. The guilty, they cannot hide from the little grey cells." He dismissed the guests, who filed out in uneasy silence, their glances darting like arrows. Alone with Hastings, Poirot confided his true purpose. The glow. It was but a catalyst, mon ami. It stirred the pot, and now we watch the ingredients rise. Hastings frowned. "You think one of them will crack?" "Oui," Poirot replied. "The guilty mind, it is like a spring. Press it, and it must release." Determined to press further, Poirot sought out Dr. Langston for a private audience. The historian was in his room, surrounded by books and papers, his thin frame hunched over a desk littered with sketches of the dagger. Poirot entered without knocking, his presence commanding attention. "Monsieur Langston," he said, his tone sharp, "you have been less than candid. The dagger, it holds a secret beyond its sapphire, does it not? A compartment, perhaps, within the hilt." Langston's pen froze, his face paling. How did you know?" Poirot's smile was faint but triumphant. "The little grey cells, they notice what others overlook. The dagger's hilt, it is unusually heavy in the sketches. You so carefully guard. A hollow space, n'est-ce pas, to conceal something of value, a gem, a document, a secret." Langston slumped, his defiance crumbling. "Yes," he admitted, his voice low. "The hilt has a false compartment, known only to a few scholars. I discovered it in my research, but I told no one, not even Lady Eleanor. It could hold a smaller gem, perhaps a diamond, or even a coded message from its Venetian origins. I thought, if I could examine it, I might uncover its true history." "And you did not share this with the others?" Poirot pressed. "Not even Monsieur Crane, who questions the dagger's authenticity?" Langston shook his head. "Crane's a vulture, only interested in profit. I wanted the dagger for its historical value, not its price. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The compartment was a new thread, one that shifted the motive from the dagger's outward value to a hidden treasure. He thanked Langston and left, his thoughts turning to the other guests. The compartment suggested a deeper game, one of knowledge, not just greed. He next sought Clara, finding her in the conservatory, where she was pruning a rosebush with surgical precision. "Mademoiselle," he said, "you spoke of an argument between Crane and Langston. Tell me more." Clara set down her shears, her eyes meeting his. "I overheard them 2 nights ago, near the library. Crane was insisting the dagger was a replica, worth far less than Langston claimed. Langston was furious, saying Crane was a fool who couldn't see its true value. It was heated. Crane even threatened to expose Langston as a fraud." "Most intriguing," Poirot said. "And you, mademoiselle, what do you make of this talk of a fake?" Clara shrugged, her smile enigmatic. "I think Crane's trying to drive down the price so he can buy it cheap. But Langston's obsession, it's not just academic. He's hiding something, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot thanked her, his suspicions deepening. The idea of a replica introduced a new layer of deception. Was the stolen dagger the true artifact, or a decoy meant to mislead? And if it concealed a compartment, what might it hold? As night fell, Poirot returned to the library, his torch casting a narrow beam across the shelves. He examined the drag mark again, noting its proximity to the bookshelf where the glove had been found. Kneeling, he ran his fingers along the base, discovering a faint groove in the wood, as if a panel had been moved. He pressed gently, and a small section of the shelf clicked open, revealing a narrow space, empty, but bearing traces of dust disturbed recently. "Hastings," he called softly, summoning his friend from the corridor. "We have found the stage for our drama. This compartment, it was used to hide something. Perhaps the dagger itself, before it was stolen." Hastings peered into the space, his eyes wide. "Good Lord, Poirot! You think the thief hid the dagger here then, staged the break-in?" "Précisément," Poirot said. "The theft was a performance, but for whose benefit? To frighten Lady Eleanor, to mislead us, or to conceal a greater prize?" As they retired, the manor seemed to pulse with secrets, its shadows whispering of betrayal. Poirot, his mind a whirl of connections, knew the truth was near. The sapphire's glow, though a trick, had illuminated the cracks in the guests' facades. One of them, he was certain, would soon betray themselves, and he would be ready. Chapter 6. The Confession. The air in Blackthorn Manor grew heavier with each passing hour, as if the fog outside had seeped into the very walls, thickening the atmosphere with suspicion and dread. Hercule Poirot, his small frame radiating purpose, stood in the morning room, his sharp eyes scanning the faces of the assembled guests. The discovery of the hidden compartment in the library's bookshelf had confirmed his suspicions. The theft of the sapphire dagger was a meticulously staged act, designed not only to steal, but to deceive. The clues, the sapphire chip, the wax droplet, the lavender-scented cloth, the embroidered glove, the drag mark, and now the secret panel, were threads in a tapestry of human ambition and fear. Captain Hastings, seated beside him, fidgeted with a silver cigarette case, his honest face etched with impatience. "Poirot," he whispered, "that compartment in the library, it's a game changer, isn't it? Someone hid the dagger there before smashing the case. But who? And why all this cloak and dagger nonsense?" Poirot's lips curved in a faint smile. "Patience, mon ami. The cloak and dagger, as you call it, is the key. It is not the dagger's absence that matters, but the illusion of its theft. We are close to the truth, but we must tread carefully, lest the guilty slip through our fingers." The morning had brought a startling development. A groundskeeper, tending the rose garden near the library window, had discovered the sapphire dagger itself, half buried in a hedge, its blade stained with what appeared to be blood. The find sent a ripple of panic through the household. Lady Eleanor, summoned to the scene, clutched her shawl, her composure faltering as she gazed at the weapon. Reginald Marwood, his face ashen, stood frozen, while Clara Vaughan's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. Dr. Felix Langston, clutching his ever-present notebook, muttered about the curse's wrath, while Mrs. Beatrice Harrow fell to her knees, her prayers a desperate chant. Victor Crane, his heavy frame looming, stared at the dagger with a mixture of surprise and calculation. Poirot, undeterred by the theatrics, knelt to examine the dagger. The blood, he noted, was fresh, its coppery scent unmistakable. Yet there was no body, no sign of violence within the manor. The blade's sapphire gleamed dully in the grey light, and the hilt, as Langston had admitted, bore the faint outline of a concealed compartment. Poirot's gloved fingers traced its contours, confirming the mechanism was intact, but empty. "This is no accident," he declared, rising to face the guests. "The dagger was placed here, not lost. The blood, it is a message, meant to frighten or to mislead." Mrs. Harrow's voice rose, shrill with fear. "It's the curse! The sapphire demands blood!" Clara's sharp retort cut through the air. "Nonsense. Someone's playing a cruel game, and I'd wager they're in this very circle." Poirot raised a hand for silence. "Mademoiselle Vaughan is correct. This is no supernatural act, but a human one. The dagger was hidden, then revealed, to sow fear. But fear of what? That is the question. He instructed the groundskeeper to guard the dagger until it could be examined further, then gathered the guests in the drawing room for questioning. His first target was Reginald, whose nervous demeanour had grown more pronounced. Poirot led him to a quiet corner, his voice gentle but unrelenting. "Monsieur Marwood," he began, "you are troubled, and not only by debts. The glove with the R, it points to you. The dagger's return, stained with blood, unnerves you. Speak the truth, I beg you. Were you in the library the night of the theft?" Reginald's hands shook, his boyish charm crumbling. I didn't steal it, Monsieur Poirot, I swear. But I was in the library earlier that night. I thought about taking the dagger, selling it to clear my debts. Crane had a buyer lined up, said it could fetch enough to save me, but I couldn't do it. Mother would never forgive me, and I feared the curse. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You feared the curse, yet you planned to steal. And what did you see in the library? Reginald swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. A figure, cloaked, near the case. I thought it was a trick of the light, but it moved, silently, like a shadow. I ran back to my room, too scared to stay. I didn't tell anyone, not even Clara. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing the admission. Merci, monsieur. Your candour is noted. Remain here, and speak of this to no one. Next, Poirot sought Victor Crane, finding him in the billiard room, idly rolling a cue ball across the green felt. The dealer's brusque manner had hardened, his eyes wary as Poirot approached. "Monsieur Crane," Poirot said, "you have been less than forthcoming. You spoke to Reginald of selling the dagger, yet you question its authenticity. Why?" Crane's grip on the cue ball tightened. "I know a fake when I see one. The dagger's well crafted, but the sapphire, it's too perfect, too modern. I told Langston it's a replica, worth a fraction of what he claims. He got angry, said I was trying to cheat the Marwoods." "And were you?" Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. Crane's laugh was harsh. "I'm a businessman, not a thief. I offered Reginald a deal, sell the dagger, real, or fake, and split the profit. He was desperate enough to listen." Poirot's gaze lingered on Crane's muddy boots, still flecked with garden soil. "Yet you were outside that night, near the library. And now the dagger reappears, stained with blood. What do you know of this?" "Nothing," Crane snapped, but his eyes flickered. I told you. I took a walk. If the dagger's back, maybe the curse isn't a fairy tale after all. Poirot dismissed him, his suspicions deepening. Crane's denial was too vehement, his story too convenient. The blood on the dagger, Poirot suspected, was a theatrical flourish, but whose hand had wielded it? He turned to Clara Vaughan, who was in the conservatory, her fingers tracing the petals of a wilted orchid. "Mademoiselle," he said, "you have a keen mind. You overheard Crane and Langston argue about the dagger's authenticity. Have you other observations to share?" Clara's eyes met his, sharp and assessing. "I've noticed plenty, Monsieur Poirot. Reginald's been a wreck, sneaking off to meet Crane. Langston's obsessed, always scribbling about the dagger's history. And Mrs. Harrow, she's terrified, but I think it's guilt, not spirits. She keeps wandering near the library, muttering about visions." "And the blood on the dagger?" Poirot asked. Clara's lips twitched. "A trick, I'd bet. Someone wants us scared, maybe to keep us from asking questions. But I'm not fooled. That dagger's hiding something. Maybe in that compartment Langston let slip about." Poirot nodded, impressed by her acuity. "You are perceptive, mademoiselle, but take care. Perception can make one a target." As evening approached, Poirot gathered the guests once more, this time in the grand hall, where the portraits of Marwood ancestors seemed to watch with silent judgment. He held the dagger, now cleaned of blood, its sapphire catching the light. "Mes amis," he said, "the dagger's return is no miracle, but a calculated act. The blood was fresh, yet no one is harmed. This suggests a purpose, to deepen the myth of the curse or to divert suspicion. But from whom?" He turned to Langston, whose nervous energy had not abated. "Monsieur, you knew of the dagger's compartment. Did you also know what it contained?" Langston's spectacles glinted as he shook his head. "I swear, I only suspected it might hold something. A gem, a relic. I never saw it open." Poirot's gaze shifted to Mrs. Harrow, who clutched her rosary. "Madame, your visions, they are vivid. Have they shown you the dagger's hiding place?" She trembled, her voice a whisper. "Only in dreams, Monsieur Poirot. The cloaked figure, it mocks me." Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind was relentless. "The truth, it is near. One among you knows more than they admit. I urge you, speak now, before the net tightens." The guests exchanged uneasy glances, but none spoke. Poirot dismissed them, his mind racing. Reginald's confession, Crane's evasions, Clara's insights, and Langston's secrecy all pointed to a complex web. The blood, he suspected, was a distraction, perhaps from an animal, meant to fuel fear. But the compartment, what had it held, and why stage its theft? As night fell, Poirot confided in Hastings. "The dagger's return, it changes the game, mon ami. It was never meant to be gone for long. The thief seeks not to possess it, but to use it as a pawn. Tomorrow, we shall force their hand." The manor settled into an uneasy silence, its secrets coiled like a spring. Poirot, his little grey cells ablaze, knew the final act was near. The sapphire dagger, with its whispered curse, was a mirror reflecting human desires, and he would shatter that mirror to reveal the truth. Chapter 7. The Unmasking. The fog that enveloped Blackthorn Manor seemed to tighten its grip as the third day dawned, its grey tendrils curling around the Gothic spires like a living thing. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand drawing room, his small, immaculate figure a stark contrast to the heavy oak panelling and brooding portraits that lined the walls. The air was thick with anticipation, the guests' nerves frayed by the sapphire dagger's mysterious theft and its equally enigmatic return, stained with blood. Captain Hastings, ever at Poirot's side, leaned against a marble fireplace, his honest face etched with a mix of awe and exasperation at his friend's relentless pursuit of the truth. "Poirot," Hastings whispered, "you've got them all on edge with that glowing sapphire trick, And now the dagger's back with blood on it. Someone's bound to slip up soon, aren't they? Poirot's green eyes gleamed with quiet confidence. Précisément, mon ami. The guilty, they cannot resist the pressure of the little grey cells. Each clue, the chip, the wax, the cloth, the glove, the drag mark, the compartment, has been a step toward the truth. Today, we shall lay bare the heart of this deception. The morning had been one of feverish activity. Poirot had spent the early hours re-examining the dagger, now safely locked in Lady Eleanor's study. The blood, he confirmed through a simple chemical test, was animal in origin, likely from a rabbit or pheasant, a detail that deepened his conviction that the theft was a theatrical ruse. The hidden compartment in the dagger's hilt, though empty, bore faint scratches, suggesting it had recently held something small and valuable. Reginald's confession of his aborted plan to steal the dagger, Victor Crane's evasive half-truths, Clara Vaughan's sharp observations, and Dr. Felix Langston's guarded knowledge of the dagger's secrets had all pointed Poirot toward a single conclusion. The theft was not about the dagger's outward value, but what it concealed. At noon, Poirot summoned the household to the drawing-room, where the fire crackled with a deceptive warmth. Lady Eleanor stood by the window, her silver-streaked hair catching the dim light, her face a mask of resolve tempered by exhaustion. Reginald, his hands unsteady, avoided his fiancée's gaze. Clara Vaughan sat with poised elegance, her eyes scanning the room like a predator's. Dr. Langston clutched his notebook, his thin frame taut with nervous energy. Mrs. Beatrice Harrow, her rosary a constant companion, murmured prayers, her fear of the curse undimmed. Victor Crane, his burly frame slouched in an armchair, watched Poirot with a mix of defiance and unease. Poirot paced before the fire, his hands clasped behind his back, his voice clear and deliberate. "Mes amis," he began, "the affair of the Sapphire Dagger is no tale of curses, but of human greed and cunning. The theft, the cloaked figure, the blood-stained blade, these are not the work of spirits, but of a mind that seeks to manipulate. Let us unravel this web, thread by thread." He turned to the group, his gaze piercing. The dagger was taken from its case, the glass shattered, yet the lock remained untouched. Footprints led to a locked window, a sapphire chip was left behind, and a secret compartment in the bookshelf was revealed. Then, the dagger reappears, stained with animal blood. Why such a performance? To frighten, to mislead, and to conceal a greater prize. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The dagger's true value lies not in its sapphire, but in what its hilt concealed. A rare diamond, known only to a few, hidden by the Marwood ancestors to protect it from thieves. This diamond, worth far more than the dagger itself, was the true target of our thief. Mrs. Harrow gasped, her rosary clicking. "A diamond! The curse! It guards its treasures!" Clara's eyes narrowed, but she remained silent. Reginald's face paled, his hands clenching. Langston's notebook slipped from his grasp, landing with a soft thud. Crane's jaw tightened, his fingers twitching. Poirot continued, his voice rising. The thief staged the theft to suggest a supernatural force, using the legend of the curse to keep us from looking too closely. The sapphire chip, the wax droplet, the lavender-scented cloth, the glove with the R, all were props in this charade. But the little grey cells, they see through the fog. He turned to Dr. Langston, whose spectacles glinted nervously. "Monsieur Langston, you are the architect of this drama. You knew of the dagger's compartment, discovered in your research, but you withheld this from Lady Eleanor. You broke the case, planted the chip, and hid the dagger in the bookshelf's secret panel, intending to retrieve it later. The blood on the blade, a rabbit, killed to fuel the curse's myth, its blood smeared by your hand." Langston leapt to his feet, his voice shrill. "That's absurd! I'm a scholar, not a thief. I wanted to study the dagger, not steal it. Poirot's smile was cold. Non, monsieur. You wanted the diamond. You argued with Monsieur Crane, who suspected the dagger was a fake, because you feared he would expose your plan. The footprints, so carefully scuffed, were yours, made to suggest an outsider. The scratch on the window frame, too precise for a break-in, was your mark. And the glove with the R, a clever touch, meant to cast suspicion on Monsieur Reginald, whose debts made him an easy target. Reginald started, his eyes wide. Me? I told you, I didn't take it. Indeed you did not, Poirot said, his tone softening. Your confession, it was honest, if incomplete. You planned to steal, but you lacked the courage. The true thief used your desperation to cloud the truth. Langston's face crumpled, his defiance waning. You can't prove this, he stammered. The diamond, where is it? Poirot produced a small velvet pouch from his pocket, revealing a sparkling diamond, its facets catching the firelight. This, monsieur, I found in your room, hidden inside the spine of your precious book on Venetian antiquities. You underestimated Hercule Poirot. The room erupted in murmurs. Lady Eleanor stepped forward, her voice trembling. Is this true, Dr. Langston? You betrayed our trust. Langston sank into his chair, his hands covering his face. I only wanted to secure my legacy as a historian. The diamond, it could fund my research, prove my theories. I never meant harm. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. Yet you sowed fear, used the curse to manipulate. The cloaked figure Madame Harrow saw in her dreams. Your doing, monsieur, wearing a cloak from the manor's attic to haunt the corridors, reinforcing the legend. Mrs. Harrow gasped, her prayers faltering. Clara's lips curved in a faint smile, as if she had suspected as much. Crane's shoulders relaxed, his suspicion replaced by grim satisfaction. Reginald, relieved, reached for Clara's hand, which she accepted with a nod. Poirot turned to Lady Eleanor. Madam, the diamond is yours, a Marwood heirloom. The dagger, it is safe now, its curse revealed as a fiction. I suggest you secure both in a vault, far from greedy hands. Lady Eleanor nodded, her eyes glistening. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. You have saved us from more than theft. As Langston was led away by the footman to await the constable, Poirot addressed the group one final time. The human heart, it is the true stage of this drama. Greed, fear, ambition, they are the daggers that cut deepest. But the truth, it always shines through. The guests dispersed, their relief palpable, but tempered by the weight of the ordeal. Poirot, satisfied, turned to Hastings. Another puzzle solved, mon ami. The little grey cells, they never fail. Hastings grinned, shaking his head. You're a marvel, Poirot, but I'll never understand how you see through all the smoke and mirrors. Poirot's smile was serene. It is simple, Hastings. I look not at the shadows, but at the light they conceal. Chapter 8. The Legacy Restored. The fog that had cloaked Blackthorn Manor for days began to lift as the sun broke through, casting a pale golden light over the Devon hills. The manor, though still imposing with its Gothic spires and weathered stone, seemed to breathe easier, as if relieved of a burden. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit pristine despite the tumult of the past days, stood in the grand hall, his small hands adjusting his tie-pin with meticulous care. The sapphire dagger, its curse unmasked as a human contrivance, rested once more in a reinforced case in Lady Eleanor's study, while the hidden diamond, recovered from Dr. Langston's deceit, lay secure in the family vault. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, stood beside him, his face alight with admiration for his friend's brilliance. Well, Poirot, Hastings said, clapping his hands together, you've done it again, unravelled a tangled web and put that so-called curse to rest. I must say I thought we were in for a ghostly chase, but you saw straight through it. Poirot's green eyes twinkled, though his expression remained composed. Mon ami, There are no ghosts in the affairs of men, only shadows cast by their desires. The little grey cells, they see the truth where others see only mystery. The morning had been one of resolution. Dr. Felix Langston, his scholarly facade shattered, had been taken into custody by the local constable, who arrived promptly after Lady Eleanor's summons. His confession, wrung from him by Poirot's relentless logic, had laid bare his plan: to steal the diamond hidden in the dagger's hilt, using the legend of the curse to mask his theft. The sapphire chip, the wax droplet, the lavender-scented cloth, the embroidered glove, the drag mark, and the hidden compartment in the bookshelf, all had been his tools, carefully placed to sow fear and suspicion. The blood on the dagger, from a poached rabbit, was his final flourish, meant to deepen the illusion of supernatural vengeance. Lady Eleanor, restored to her dignity, joined Poirot and Hastings in the hall, her silver-streaked hair catching the light as she offered her thanks. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but warm, "you have saved not only our heirloom, but our peace. I feared the curse was real, but you have shown it to be a cruel deception. How can I repay you?" Poirot bowed slightly, his moustache curling with a modest smile. "Madame, the truth is my reward. The dagger and its diamond are safe, and your family's legacy is intact. I ask only that you guard them well, for objects of beauty often attract the greed of men." Reginald Marwood, his boyish charm returning, approached with Clara Vaughan at his side. The ordeal had stripped away his recklessness, and he spoke with newfound resolve. "Monsieur Poirot, I was a fool to consider selling the dagger. My debts, they drove me to desperation, but I swear I'll settle them honestly. Clara's, agreed to help me start anew." Clara, her sharp eyes softened by a rare warmth, nodded. "Reginald's got potential, if he can stay out of card rooms. I'm not one for sentiment, Monsieur Poirot, but you've given us a chance to rebuild." Poirot's gaze lingered on her, impressed by her candour. "Mademoiselle, your clarity is a rare gift. Use it wisely, and you will guide Monsieur Reginald well." Mrs. Beatrice Harrow, her rosary quiet for the first time in days, hovered nearby, her nervous demeanour replaced by a tentative calm. "I was so certain it was the curse," she admitted, her voice soft. "My dreams, they seem so real, but you've shown me it was just fear playing tricks." Poirot's smile was gentle. "Madam, the mind, it creates its own spectres. Trust in reason, and the shadows will fade." Victor Crane, the antiques dealer, had kept his distance, his brusque manner subdued by the revelation of Langston's guilt. He approached Poirot reluctantly, his heavy frame slouched. "I misjudged you, Poirot," he said gruffly. "Thought you were just a dandy with a moustache, but you've got a sharp mind. I didn't trust Langston, but I never thought he'd go that far." Poirot inclined his head. "Monsieur, suspicion is a tool, but only when wielded with precision. Your instincts were not wrong, but your silence allowed the deception to grow." As the guests prepared to depart, the manor's staff bustled about, restoring order to the disrupted household. The portraits of Marwood ancestors, which had seemed to watch with silent judgment, now appeared merely sombre, their secrets no longer a threat. Lady Eleanor invited Poirot and Hastings to stay for lunch, but Poirot declined, citing a pressing engagement in London, a polite fiction, Hastings knew, to allow the family to heal in private. The two men boarded the afternoon train to London, the countryside rolling past in a blur of green and gold. Hastings, settled in the plush carriage, lit a cigarette and leaned back, his mind still turning over the case. "You know, Poirot," he said, exhaling a plume of smoke, "I thought Reginald was our man, with that glove and his debts, and Crane's muddy boots had me fooled. How did you know it was Langston all along?" Poirot's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Not all along, mon ami. The clues, they spoke, but it was the pattern that revealed the truth. Langston's obsession with the dagger's history was no mere scholarship. It was a hunger for its hidden treasure. The sapphire chip, placed to suggest the curse. The wax from a candle he used to search the compartment. The cloth, stolen from Madame Harrow to fuel her visions. The glove, planted to implicate Reginald. The blood, a final act to terrify. All pointed to a mind that sought to control the narrative. His mistake was underestimating Hercule Poirot. Hastings chuckled, shaking his head. "You're a wonder, Poirot. But I'll never understand how you keep all those threads straight." "It is simple, Hastings," Poirot said, his voice serene. "The human heart, it is a map. Greed, fear, ambition. They leave their marks, and I follow them to the truth." As the train's whistle pierced the air, Blackthorn Manor faded into the distance, its secrets laid bare. The sapphire dagger, its curse dispelled, would remain a Marwood heirloom, a reminder of the folly of those who sought to claim it unjustly. Poirot, his little grey cells at rest, gazed out the window, already anticipating the next puzzle that would call him from his orderly world. For in the game of human motives, there was always another mystery waiting to be solved.